ICQ Podcast episode 331, Launch of the Portable Operation Challenge. Well, hello fellow Amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, our 331st episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported this episode by Charles Riley, Golf 4, Juliet, Quebec X-Ray, along with our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin Edmund MRB is joined by Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie India Bravo, Dan, Kilo Bravo 6, November Uniform, and Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is the launch of the Portable Operations Challenge. Well, as always, it's your very kind donations that keep us advert free and pays our ways, our hosting costs, etc. This episode, we'd like to thank Charles Riley, Golf 4, Juliet, Quebec X-Ray, who says he thought the roundtable discussion on episode 330 was excellent. Keep up the great work. We certainly will do. So you can show your appreciation for the show and the value you get from it by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate. Well, as I say, your donations keep us advert free. This weekend's also Martin's birthday weekend, Martin MNLB's birthday weekend. So again, guys, if you'd like to show your appreciation for the work he does and pop along some money for a cup of coffee or two for him, say that's the way you do it for yourself. Right, well now we're going to head over to the news roundtable, where we're going to join Martin, Leslie, Dan and Edmund as they discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including FT8 Experiment on 40 megahertz and smartphone app identifies data modes. As always, hope you enjoy.
Hi guys, and welcome to episode 331 of the ICQ Rap News podcast, and tonight's roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB. Hi, Leslie.
Good evening, Martin. Glad to be on again. Did we just do the recording a few moments ago? Because that was absolutely hilarity.
Well, I thought you dropped out because I started having a strop, but never mind.
Oh, well, never mind.
Yeah, you're back. She's the good
Yes, I am. I'm having microphone problems at the moment, but I will persevere.
Yeah, just don't break it, right? All right. Moving across the pond, we have Mr. Dan Romanchik, KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Hi, guys.
Good to have you, Dan. And as I say, there's a few lively ones coming up, which I think we'll discuss quite well. We also have Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, it's good to have you on board. So, nice to hear you. Now, Matthew is still in lockdown in Spain. He's told Chris Howard he's back in September. The way the coronavirus has hit Spain for a second wave, I think he might not be back quite that soon, or he'll have to self-isolate when he gets back. And unfortunately, Ruth Willett, KM4LAO, got a call from the company she works for when she's not at college saying, we got this mega project and we really need your help. We need you in. Can you come and help us? So unfortunately, Ruth has had to do that. But she said she's looking forward to being back with us fairly soon. Okay, our first news story. FT8 experiments on 8 meters, 40 megahertz. And that's been happening between the 1st to 15th of August, 2020. Now, Leslie, not a band you've played with, but what do you think?
Well, I'm not an FT8 person. I've got no experience on that at all. I have played on 50 megs, but I'm just looking at this. I mean, my eyes are sort of, is this a toe in the crack? We can sort of an amateur band of the future. Is this, you know where I'm coming from on this, Martin?
Yeah, well, I think we've looked the interference we're getting down in the HF bands, at the bottom of the HF bands by power line stuff and internet. I think this could be. I think amateurs will eventually move higher in frequency. So this could be part of the way, Leslie.
Yeah, I mean, I use 70 megs, and personally I find 70 megs better than 2 meters, but if there just could be another allocation there, I think this long term could be a good thing. But yet, as an experiment to see what can be done, I'm all for it. Let's roll it on.
Yeah, certainly. Well, at the moment, Lithuania has it, Slovenia has it, and Ireland have the 8-meter band. To the best of my knowledge, they're the only 3 that have this at the moment. Certainly us in the UK don't, and I'm afraid you don't have it either, do you, Dan?
Oh no, this is the first I've actually even heard of this band. That's kind of amazing to me. Like what equipment are people using on it?
Well, I was told by Ed Durant that if you modify your rig, some of these SDR rigs like the ICOM 7300, and this is from Ed telling me, you should be able to get up into this frequency band by widebanding it. Now,
Oh, cool.
I haven't actually done this, so I can't prove it. And Ed, if I got it wrong, I'm blaming old-timers disease and short-term memory loss. But I think that there are people that have got radios that will go up into this frequencies around the 40 megs band. So it's interesting, I think, Dan.
Oh yeah, excellent. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, it's just below, just below 6 meters. So, yeah.
In fact, since these experiments are going on, and people have reported propagation on 6 meters to Europe, maybe even the U.S. hams can tune in and see if they can copy the FT8.
Yeah, well, there's with some. I mean, okay, initially you might not have license to transmit, but it's nothing to stop you listening, and with one of these software-defined radio dongles, you will certainly be able to listen on these frequencies and see what's going on, I would suggest.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. So, Edmund, you're a VHF man like myself. You would enjoy this sort of thing, wouldn't you?
I would indeed, to the extent that I've already joined the Facebook group, which is called 40 megahertz and 60 megahertz group. And their banner photo is a Yaesu Fox Tango 650, which I gather is a slightly older rig, but at the top of their Facebook page there's a photo of one of those tuned to 40.250, so I assume that particular rig at least can transmit on the 40 megahertz band. Other transceivers are doubtlessly available. So this is an interesting band because it sits obviously between 10 meters and 6 meters. And we know from experience further down the spectrum that sometimes you don't have to move very many megahertz to get radically different propagation. For example, I've quite often heard activity on the 12 meter band when 10 meters has been completely empty and there's only a gap of 4 megahertz between those two bands, isn't there? So I'll be interested to see the results of these propagation experiments. The web page linked to in the show notes, it tells us about the dates, the times and the mode, FT8, but it doesn't speak of power levels, antennas or antenna orientation. I assume they'll be using beam antennas, log periodics perhaps, or maybe they've homebrewed some Yagis for 40 megahertz. I assume they'll be horizontally polarized as is normal for weak signal work, but I've no idea which direction they would have been pointing in. I've not heard any amateur transmissions around 40 megahertz. The other slight complication is that there is a worldwide allocated ISM band, Industrial Science and Medical band, from about 40.6 to 40.9 from memory. So one of the people taking part in this experiment was transmitting on 40.680. Up until a couple of years ago, there was a low power licensed free baby monitor on that exact frequency that was S9 plus. Fortunately, whoever had it installed has long since unplugged the thing or moved on to something better. So if you do listen out, particularly on or around that frequency, which I do know is a favoured frequency for operators on the 40 megahertz band, particularly from Eastern Europe. If you do listen on that band and you try to hear FT8, then you might very well find it being squashed by a very local, low-powered, legal or semi-legal, license-free device instead, like the baby monitor, for example, which has now disappeared. I've not heard any transmissions there, but there is at least one video on YouTube of somebody in East Sussex receiving an SSB transmission on 40 megs, an amateur transmission, and I put a link to that video on the ICQ podcast Facebook group a week or two back. I think it was, Martin. So I'm listening from time to time, but I don't rate my chances of ever actually hearing anything. Martin, back to you.
Yeah, well, I understand, and I think with these software-defined radios receivers we can get now, and I know a number of us have got them, you can pretty much bring the waterfall display up over a range of frequencies, and it'll be a lot easier than trying to spot just a little bit of transmission happening every now and again. You've got a wide-angle picture of what's going on those frequencies. Might be a good one to play with. I think that more and more of us will get the frequencies, or I hope they will. And the other one I hope the States get at some point in time is 4 meters, because that's a lovely band. Okay, moving on. And the story starts, why hobby electronics is a great thing to take up. Well, every ham, or a large proportion of hams that I've met and have taken their license within the last 5 or 6 years, has got interested in electronics. They've fiddled around, they've learnt, they've studied, and it's taken their amateur radio experience to a new level. And I look back at them and I think, you've done phenomenally well, some of them that had no electronics background, A, to get a full license, and B, now have a real interest in hobby electronics and fixing things. So I think our two hobbies are very much interlinked. What do you think, Dan?
Oh, definitely. You know, I when I teach classes, I always tell everybody, you know, you may not think that you're going to get into the electronics that much, but learning the electronics will help you in so many ways. You know, you'll save money by building your own cables. You'll save money by, you know, having a little bit more confidence in fixing your radios once you know, should they go south on you. And yeah, I encourage people to do that, and because it's, like they should say in the article, it's a very fulfilling part of the hobby.
Yeah, well, often though, Dan, when you have a knowledge of how something works, and maybe we won't be design engineers, maybe we'll be just fixers, but if you understand how something works, then, you know, it's pretty much, you can cut through the BS that some people tell you and go, well, that just can't work because that just doesn't obey the laws of physics. And I think the knowledge that goes with amateur radio is great. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, Martin, I've been listening to this one with interest. It's good because when you're trying to learn this stuff at college, it's very dry, and trying to learn about Kirchhoff's law and 5/5 time, and you go, oh, you know, I mean, it really does. But once you start getting your hands dirty, and I need a timer for this particular device. Well, how do I make that? Oh, well, let's get the book out, and oh yes, I need to change that value of resistor and that value of capacitor. Then all that boring stuff that nobody learns, it all starts to make sense because you're getting your hands dirty. But I think it's great, and it gets you going as well. Like you said, when you want to repair gear, you don't hesitate. You just get on and repair it. Yeah, the other thing as well, I mean, it really does help when because you've got that practical knowledge. It helps when you go for work interviews and you can show an actual background and an interest in engineering. That's where I'm coming from. I mean, I started when I was about 15, messing about with bits and pieces. So that's one other thing I should mention is people that do advertisements for this type of thing. Can they when the picture they always show the person touching the hot tip as they're doing the PCB board. Have you noticed that, Martin?
Yeah, I've noticed the lovely young lady, the very pretty young lady they photographed working on a PCB board, holding a soldering iron like a pen. She was holding
Yeah, that was
the
the one.
element.
It did make me chuckle.
Oh yeah, but I mean that's just marketing people and people who don't know what they think. And once again, that's the sort of BS that you're going to avoid, because you understand. Let's look, guys. Let's be brutally honest about it. There's two ends to a soldering iron: a hot end and a cold end.
Yeah.
You hold the cold end. Otherwise, it smells horrible. Well, burning flesh smells horrible. I'm sorry. But, yeah, I mean, it's like I built hands-free operation for my car, both my cars. And effectively, there's a switch on the gear stick, the shift stick, so I can switch in PTT. Just switch it on and off.
You make this stuff.
Yeah. But in truthfulness, it's a computer mic, one resistor, two capacitors. One is a blocking capacitor, the other one just rolls off some of the high frequencies, and it plugs into the microphone socket. Now, it costs under a tenner to make. Under 10.
And if you was to buy that commercially, what, 50, 60 quid?
Yeah. Now, they might put extra bits in it, like, up, down channels.
Or a flashy label.
Yeah, a flashy label. But in fairness, I published a circuit on the ICQ website somewhere years ago. It's there if you want to see it. If not, contact me. But it really is a computer microphone, a switch, two capacitors and one resistor, and then the cable which goes into the microphone socket.
Where's the ground line? Where's the PTT line? Where's the receive? Boom, there you are, done.
It really is. It's dead simple. But there you go. Edmund, what's your thoughts on this one?
I might be having a grumpy old man moment here because we've just experienced a heat wave down here on the south coast lasting several days, so I am very sleep deprived at the moment. So if my grumpy levels are a lot higher than they normally are, I'll apologise in advance. But I read this article a couple of times, and whilst I don't disagree with anything it says at all, it does strike me that it basically boils down to electronics is a good hobby to get into because by making things or repairing things, you can save yourself money by avoiding buying them new, and you get a good deal of sense of satisfaction from doing it. And if you want to have a go, there's loads of information and training and advice out there on the internet. Off you go. Well, yes, that is true. But equally, you could replace electronics with the name of pretty much any other hobby, couldn't you? And all of that would still hold true. So I don't disagree with the article, but I can't honestly say it thrilled me, Martin.
Well, I hear where you're coming from. I disagree in that, and I have no axe to grind about fishing. But you can learn a lot about fishing, but it wouldn't teach you how to fix things. You can, so much of our stuff we have these days is electronic. There's little things that I've fixed that we got a hall light switch on the landing, and it comes on when somebody walks upstairs. The upstairs light comes on, and it works. It's automated. It works very well. When it went wrong, Colin gave me a lot of earache about why was I repairing it when I could go out and buy a new one. Well, at the time they were quite expensive. They're about 40 quid, and I couldn't find another one easy. But the electronic component that had gone wrong was about 80 pence. Yeah, big difference. But it wasn't only money. It's great satisfaction It's great satisfaction. And it's like when you build a receiver or your transceiver or whatever you do, you get a lot of personal satisfaction that I did that. Is, I think, where I would see electronics being the ideal thing.
And on the few occasions that I've visited your house, Martin, I have had the pleasure and enjoyment of your lights turning themselves on and off automatically when I walked in and out of the room. So it is very good fun. So yeah, like I said, I'm having a grumpy moment. Sorry about that.
That's the phrase I would use. It's good fun. And, it just gives you some personal satisfaction to try and fix things. The only thing I would say is that I do agree that we're not used to this heat here at all. We tend to be happy when it's raining here.
Well, I'm usually the grumpy old man, but looks like you guys are taking over tonight.
No, not me, not me.
Oh, there we go. So, yeah, I kind of like this one. I hear your point, Edmund. I think the biggest problem is that you have to have a semi-interest in electronics. And if you've got an Elmer that's near you that is doing these sort of things and brings things to the club and shows you, it will rub off onto you. Because if they're having fun, then you can, I want some of that. So I think that's the difference.
There's only one word of warning, Martin.
What's that?
Right. When you're repairing stuff and you think you go along and you think, and you see some piece of equipment that's repair, you can repair gear with, and you think, oh, and you come out with the mortal phrase, that will come in useful one day.
Yeah, occasionally it does though.
You end up with a cupboard full of stuff. And you cannot be cured. That's it, gone. Yeah.
Well, I was doing some things the other day, and Mrs. B, bless her soul, was looking at me. I made a hole with the drill, and it wasn't quite the size I wanted, and I couldn't be bothered to go and get another drill. So I reached in my box, pulled the reamer out, and just reamed the hole open a bit bigger. And she went, oh, where did you get that from? How long you had that? And I said, long time, dear. I said, it's not for loan and it's not for you to dig holes in things with. That's mine. So, yeah. But, it has to be fun. Right, I'm going to move on. And unfortunately, poor Edmund can't do this at the moment unless somebody can tell him. But there's a new smartphone app out that helps you identify the different data modes. Now, what you do is you hold it near the speaker of your radio. It listens for about 5 seconds or so when you push the button, and then it tries to identify the data mode that's being used that your receiver's receiving. Now, I know you've seen the videos and all that sort of thing, Edmund, so I will let you go first on this one. But at the moment, it looks like it's only Android, although you're hoping that somebody will tell you it's available for the Apple, aren't you, Edmund?
Well, if it is available or if it becomes available, I will definitely be downloading it, and not purely because it's free, although as a radio amateur, I must admit, a free price tag is always very alluring. But anybody who has tuned around the HF bands in those gaps between the broadcast bands and the amateur bands will recognise the sound of most of the data modes that this app will cope with. There's a list in the show notes, and from the way it was worded, it seems to suggest that as time goes by, more modes might be added. But yes, there's certainly an awful lot of signals to go at on the HF bands if you have a tune around, and it doesn't actually decode those modes. It simply tells you what they are, and many's the time that I've been casually tuning around and heard a noise and thought to myself, well, that's obviously a data mode of some description, but absolutely no idea what it is. So even though you can't decode it and actually read what the message is that it conceals, at least this program will tell you what the mode is, and there's an interest there in itself, isn't there, Martin? Back to you.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, there is one data mode I noticed was missing, so I'm going to ask Dan to talk about that. There's no CW on it, Dan.
Well, hopefully most hams can pick out CW. It's a lot harder to like I can pick out RTTY, and let's see what else on this list. Maybe that's about it. But maybe PSK31. But I certainly can recognize CW, and I would hope at least that most hams can.
Yeah, I was being flippant, Dan. Sorry.
That was pretty funny. I liked it.
Yeah, but no, there's all sorts of things like APRS is a good one. I kind of recognise that because I did a fair bit of APRS about 10, 15 years ago, so I was quite into that. But as you say,
I wonder how the ASCII. I wonder how the ASCII differs from RTTY. Whether you can really hear the difference there.
Don't know unless it's a different data string type. Yeah, would it be eight data bits to stop and no parity, as opposed to 7 even and 1?
But you're hearing the frequency shift, and it's 170 hertz shift. So
yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, this is a cool app. This is a very cool app. I'm going to download it as soon as we get off here, and because you always come upon that in the HF bands. You're listening around, and you say, what the heck's that? Well, I'll just get this this old phone I got, this old Android phone, which I have down in the shack, and hold it up to the speaker, and it'll tell me what it is. So that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, when I had a quick look, I haven't tried it on VHF, but it looks like it does 30 megs and up, or up to 30 megs, and then there's another version that you select another button, it takes it 30 megs and up. So it looks like it does VHF as well. So that'll be good. So, yeah. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Well, I actually went on, let me just have a look, Google Play, and I typed in, let me just see, Signal ID. It's all one word. It came up on Google Play, no problem at all. Downloaded it, took literally less than a minute, and it's actually on my phone at the moment. I've got to play with it, but it does seem like a really good idea. We don't know everything, and you get these people that recognise things straight away. I can't do that. I need to sort of search, and sometimes people used to go on YouTube and look at the various different signals. But I think this has got potential. I think definitely potential.
Yeah, and in my books, there's no problems with using a mobile phone and an app like this, because it's a tool. It's a tool of the hobby.
Exactly.
It makes the hobby more enjoyable. So there's no right or wrong.
And it costs nothing.
Well, cost you a few minutes to listen to me waffle about it, but no, it's a free app, guys, which we're bringing to your attention, not waffle. Okay, so I'm going to give it a bit of a heavier test, but the initials, it looked very good.
If you tune around between about 4 and 6 megahertz and 8 and 9 to a lesser extent, you ought to find plenty of signals to get your teeth into.
Yeah. So there's a lot there to try it out on. Okay, moving on to our next news story. Dan sent me this. It was fairly breaking news today. A broken cable damages the Arecibo Observatory. Now, this is, if my memory is right, this is the big dish in the Brazilian jungle.
Puerto Rico,
right? Puerto Rico. I was wrong. And it's a big radio telescope, and I believe it was also featured in one of the James Bond films. But Dan, you go first.
Yeah, this was really amazing news, and if you look at the picture in the news story, you can see that the damage really is quite extensive. Apparently, somehow a 3-inch cable broke and fell into the dish, and it's really smashed it up quite a bit. Yeah, I'm sure that's lots and lots of damage there, and it's going to take it a while. Take group that's maintaining the telescope quite a while to get it back up and running.
Yeah. If at all, I'd suggest, Dan. It's because
I mean was built in 1963, so it's been around a while.
It's the same age as me. No wonder it's falling apart.
Yeah, but you're younger than us, so you got no excuse.
I seriously though, reading. I mean, I was looking at the picture, and it's like the mechanical damage. You go, oh dear. It's definitely a mechanical failure of some description. But it's a case of now, what do you do? What do you do, folks? Do you repair it? That's one option, or do you replace it? It's technologically wise. This is getting an old piece of kit. What do you do? And I'm sure that somebody somewhere's on a higher paid grade than me is going to make a decision.
Well, I'm glad I haven't got to make that decision, because it is an iconic radio telescope.
Oh, yes, indeed.
But it isn't going to be repaired in 5 minutes, put it this way. The picture shows a hell of a lot of damage. And if you think of it, if one 3-inch cable comes down from at least 100 feet in the air, there's a lot of weight and momentum that hit that dish that's just smashed it apart. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, if you had shown me that photograph and asked me to guess what had caused the damage, I would probably have said some kind of extreme weather event, or that somebody had deliberately flung a really heavy object against it. So when I read that it was caused by a 3-inch cable, that stopped me in my tracks, very much so. And I do feel rather sorry for the people involved with the operation and upkeep of this dish, because, as has already been mentioned, it's been standing there for a number of decades now and has survived several extreme weather events down the years. So to get this much damage after surviving all of that, caused just by a 3-inch cable, must be rather gut-wrenching. So, as Martin says, it's an iconic device, and I suppose the sentimental side of me would really love to see it fully repaired and brought back into full operation. Will that happen? I've absolutely no idea, but I'm crossing my fingers that they have insurance or against that kind of thing, and that it can be brought back to life.
Yeah, I hope it can be, because I think it's an iconic device. But, as I say, things move on, so they might build something bigger and better. Right, moving to our last news story. This is my chance to become a grumpy old man. Right, it says here, and this was a news story that, Dan, you covered on your blog page. It says that the ARRL HF Band Plan Committee submits a final recommendation. Rubbish. It's not final, because it'll only be... Well, come on.
The way I wrote it, though, it says the HF Band Plan Subcommittee submitted its final recommendation, not the final recommendation.
Okay. Well, anyway, what I was asking the question, and you can answer this, Dan, is I said, Dan, is this just another way of a national society finding themselves something to do when the regulator, in your case at the States, the FCC, doesn't really give a damn, you know? Or am I just being a grumpy old man? Now,
No, Martin. We've given you the Victor Meldrew Award today, so
yeah, but go for it, Dan, and explain more about it, because I'm probably being a bit uncharitable.
Well, so one of the things here in the U.S. anyway has been there's two things, and this band plan attempts to do two things. The first is there's been concern over where automatically controlled digital stations, i.e., WinLink stations, can operate, and this band plan seeks to define that space on the bands. I think that's a good thing. The second thing this band plan tries to do is to allocate space for technicians in accordance with the recommendations of the entry-level licensing committee, which recommended giving technicians expanded privileges on the HF bands. So it's trying to do both things. Now, whether or not that's a good thing to do, we can argue that. It's a lot of work to do it in two steps. So doing it in one step is probably the most practical thing to do.
No, I was going to say, Dan, but is it that you've got one thing that's important and another thing which is not quite so important, so you're hoping that the gays or the people don't look too closely at the thing that maybe is not as important and it slips through the back door?
Well, I think the way things are now, nothing's going to slip through, right? I mean, now, I mean, I got this story right off the ARRL website, right? It's a story on ARRL.org. So they're not really trying to sneak it in the back door. I mean, in a way they are, but if they really wanted to, they wouldn't have reported on it at all. So, yeah, I'm not so worried about that. And as far as it being, having one issue overshadow the other, well, I think that depends on where you're coming from. If you're not a WinLink person, well, then you care more about the tech stuff, and vice versa. If you're a tech, then you really care about the tech frequencies and maybe not so much about WinLink. So I don't think that I wouldn't be so grumpy about that. Let's put it that way.
No, it's just I'm asking the question, Dan, because it's been, I think you said it's been 2 years and they've got to this just submitting their proposal. Yeah, if it takes another 2 years to get through to become to fruition, chances are that by the time you've got to it all becoming part of the rules, parts of it will be irrelevant.
Well, yeah, things don't happen in ham radio that quickly, I don't think. So I'm not so skeptical about that. The big thing, the sort of the bigger thing here is the tech privileges. Well, again, it depends on what your operating is, but I think in the overall scheme of things, that these tech privileges are the bigger issue. And some people actually are kind of obviously against giving techs more privileges. And my personal opinion is I don't think it's going to matter all that much. The whole idea here is that if you give techs more HF privileges, they'll get a better taste for what HF operation is, and then want to upgrade to general and extra. The flip side of that, of course, is if they've already got the privileges, why bother to upgrade? So in fact, one guy called it disincentive licensing. Which I thought was pretty funny.
Similar things in this country, and I look at the discussions on the internet, and all I want to do is hide underneath the table with a tin helmet.
Well, why? I mean, I think in the overall, when all is said and done here, it's not going to be a big deal either way. On the HF bands, we don't really have. I mean, activity is pretty low now. Of course, that might be.
It is at the moment. Yes, definitely.
So that might be because we're at the lowest point in the sunspot cycle. But even if it was there was more activity, I don't know, is giving techs a few more privileges going to make that big a difference? I don't know. I don't think so.
To me personally, no. I'm all for encouraging people, but you still got to have that incentive thing. And like you said, if you give people too much, and it's like, well, what's the incentive to carry on? And I think there was a thing on the power levels in this country, and that the argument at the time was, well, how do you police the power levels? Well, the answer is you can't.
Right. Yeah.
What you were saying is, and in fairness, I've done a reasonable amount of QRP, 5 watts, 10 watts of SSB, a little bit up to 10 watts of SSB. And I think it's quite funny how often a foundation license holder will beat me into a contact. Now, and they seem much stronger than me on the band. Now, I'll give you that they could have I'll give you they could have a better aerial than me. But you know what? At the end of the day, when I go out and I operate with 10 watts, if I get 3 contacts in an afternoon on 10 watts, or 30 contacts running high power, I would still do the 3 contacts because A, it's more skillful, and B, I love to hear people say, you can't be running 10. There's no way you can be running 10 watts. And I go, my poor little ICOM 703 ain't got any more than 10 watts. So, it's. I think when all said and done, at the end of the day, providing somebody isn't causing interference, then it's very, very difficult to police the bands.
There's something at the back of my head that tells me that and I'm just trying to remember the rule. It's something like you have to times the power, I think it's by 4. Yeah, I think it's 6 dB to get 1 S point increase.
Right. That's why QRP works.
Yes, exactly.
6 dB is 1 S unit.
And most people wouldn't notice a difference.
Right. No, it's just the big stations have their RF gain turned up so high that you got to be 20 over 9 before they'll hear you. Yeah. That's the problem. Not QRP doesn't work.
Oh, QRP does work.
Yeah. Well, I know that. You know that. Yeah, it's there or thereabouts. And I often say to foundation license holders, look, it's not about the power. And I proved this on VHF one day. I took some foundation license holders out, and I probably told this story before. Took them out to a hilltop, and they wanted to run more power. So under supervision, using my license, under supervision, they worked a station about 40 miles away on 50 watts, and they were happy as Larry. And then I went, I'll show you something. And I pulled out an old FT290, Yaesu FT290, which only does 2.5 watts. I called the guy on the 290 and still got a 5 and 9 report.
I was going to say, I bet it worked.
Yeah, and I still got the 5 and 9 report from him. And we had the conversation. And then I said to him, guys, what did I tell you on the course? It's not about the power. It's about having a decent aerial in a decent location. And the aerial's doing the work, and it should be. Anyway, we've gone off a long way on this.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Edmund, I'm sorry for taking your mantle of the grumpy old man tonight, but what do you think of this one?
I can't think of anything to say.
You just don't want to get in the fight, do you?
We've left him speechless.
Well, I've been interested in listening to you, and there's nothing that anybody has said that I could disagree with. What can I say that's of relevance here? Don't know. QRP is good. Yes, absolutely agree. If you have the opportunity of upgrading your license to the full license or equivalent, then go for it, because one of the fringe benefits of that is you don't have to worry yourself with conversations or disputes over what the restrictions are at what level, whether they're fair or not, and all the rest of it. If you got the full license, you don't have to worry about all that stuff anymore. So that was a weight off my mind. And strangely enough, if you do get up to the full level, you might well find after a few years that the extra privileges that made you want to upgrade are not the ones that you value. One of my major reasons for going for the M0 was that I could operate abroad under CEPT. Since I got it in 2013, I have barely even been abroad at all, let alone operated CEPT. So that benefit that I really put value on, I've never really used. On the other hand, I never thought the day would come where I would hold a notice of variation for a radio club and for special event stations. That just never occurred to me at all. And yet in the last couple of years, doing those very things, having the full license has been really, really useful. So I would encourage anybody to upgrade because, as I say, you may well end up not using the privileges so much that you thought you were going to use, and other things that didn't seem of interest at all could come to the fore. And last but not least, towards the end of July, one afternoon I was on 40 metres using the club call sign for Amberley Museum, and I turned the power down to 10 watts because the band seemed to be very open. Now, obviously, I could have run up to 400 legally, not that I've got any linear amplifiers or anything, but I could have done 100 barefoot, but I turned it down to 10. And I won't say I had any arguments exactly, but I had probably about 3 or 4 people pretty much openingly questioning if I was telling the truth that I was only running 10 watts. To which the answer was yes, it's just that A, I've got a semi-decent antenna, and B, conditions are very good. But it was really weird that, you know, somebody who legally could run up to 400 watts therefore would have nothing to gain or lose particularly by lying about it and saying I'm only running 10 watts. Yeah, 3 or 4 people pretty much in as many words said, "Are you really? I'm having real trouble believing that. Are you sure you're only running 10 watts?" And I said, yes, I've just turned the power down. I do know how to use my radio. I assure you 10 watts is coming out the back. So it can be done if conditions are on your side. And I've now rambled so much, I've completely forgotten what the original question was, Martin. But I hope you've been entertained. Back to you.
I have, and I will say I'll close with this.
Can I add just a quick bit on this, Martin?
Go on then, Leslie.
Yeah, everyone's making really good points. I mean, I think the one thing that sort of didn't come across is the reason why these things happen is that technology does change, and it's like the licensing authority is really not too worried how we do it. But it's a case of, hang on, the band plan's got to be changed and technology is changing all the time. That's why these things happen.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if somebody didn't develop WinLink and all of a sudden we've got automatically controlled digital stations.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I would say that one thing that is a real enabler for upgrading is the knowledge. Yeah? If you just want to pick up a microphone and scream and holler, that's one small part of our hobby. But to do the study, to gain the knowledge that of a lot of things, progressing with your license is a good thing. The other one is, for me, and Edmund, you did operate in the States. I know you only operated 5 watts. Well, no, you might have operated Frank's rig at 100 watts as well. But I think we operated in the front yard of the place we stayed with Frank's rig at 100 watts. But most of the time, you and I walking around with handy talkies at the best part of 4 or 5 watts. So we had fun. And, you know, it's you're a full license in the UK, same as me. I also hold an extra in the States. I only took a radio that could do 4.5 watts or whatever it is, because that's all I needed. Anyway, I've wittered on. But Dan, I wanted to raise this one because I think your points were very good on your website, and maybe I'm being a bit uncharitable. I just thought this is just something that's dragging on and on, and rolling the two together, to me personally, didn't look that they were linked, but I'm willing to be proved wrong.
Well, they're not linked, but like I said, it's more practical to try and do two things at once than doing it in two steps.
Yeah. I'm just used to seeing things hidden within documents that get passed through, but maybe I'm just a bit cynical.
Well, you can trust me to be on top of this and always bring the truth to light.
I know you will,
you.
Dan. I know you will. That's why I wanted to discuss it, because I know that you'd have the right answer on this one. Okay. Well, guys, that concludes the news stories. Now, what have you guys been up to since the last time we recorded a podcast? And Leslie, what have you been playing with?
Well, I've been playing with the club's new, well, I'll say new, it's not quite, it was actually second-hand, but it was nearly new. They got an ICOM 7300, and we used to have, should we say, 1980s equipment. And me being the treasurer, and I look after the money and all that, and I said, look, guys, we've got enough to get something a little bit, should we say, more up to date? And we did. So got this new radio, and I've been trying to figure it out. You know, it's another learning process for me. And we've put up an antenna as well, so there's no tuning. You just press a button, bing, done. So that's what we've been doing. And also, I've been asked to do lots of same subject as earlier on. Les, can you repair this? Les, can you repair that? And the hobby's coming a tad useful, should we say? So that's what we've been doing this end. Obviously, with things occurring in the UK, which I'm sure people are aware of, there's other bits and pieces occurring as well in the background. So that's what's been happening here, Martin.
Yeah, right. Sounds good. Dan, what have you been up to? Did you take part in this virtual, what was it, Hamfest?
Yeah. So I watched a few of the presentations, and I've since watched a few on YouTube, and that was pretty interesting. Some of the topics were quite good, I thought. I'm also continuing to teach classes, so I'm tomorrow is going to be the last date for the third online tech class, and making preparations for the fourth one. I would probably do one a month here for the foreseeable future, I guess. And so that's kept me a little bit busy. I think I've finally come up with a good way to teach these classes. And so we're doing it on Zoom, and I share my screen, and I have a program called Sketchbook, which allows me to set up layers, and I get a figure. Like for example, I've got a figure off the internet that shows the ionosphere. So when I talk about the ionosphere, I can just make that particular layer appear, and then I can create another layer and draw over top of that to show how a radio wave might bounce off the ionosphere. So I think I've finally come up with a good solution there, and the students seem to like it, and so that's good. Finally, another thing I did just this week, in fact, I bought a Raspberry Pi 4, and I got Ham Clock running on it. And I don't know if you've ever seen that program, but it's a pretty cool program. It's got a whole bunch of, it's more than just a clock, obviously. It's got a whole bunch of different displays, like it'll show you the gray line display. It'll show you satellites, satellite orbits on that Earth display. It'll show you the current solar flux index and the A index, I think. There's so many things. I haven't even figured them all out yet, but it's kind of a cool thing running on this little Raspberry Pi. So that's what I've been up to.
Sounds great.
Yeah, sounds brilliant. I've not tried a Raspberry Pi 4 yet, Dan, but I know Chris has got one and reckons it works very, very well. So, yeah, sounds brilliant on that one. Right, Edmund, what have you been up to? You've been very quiet recently. What have you been up to?
Well, I haven't done a lot of on-air activity. At the end of July, I extended my record on the 4-meter band using SSB considerably. Up till then, my best DX contact was, I think, Portsmouth, which from where I'm sitting at my home QTH is probably 20 miles or so line of sight, maybe a little bit more, but nothing particularly distant in the grand scheme of things. Towards the end of July, I worked a station in southwest Iceland, which is several hundred miles, 5 and 9 reports both ways, and I was using 50 watts to a dipole, so not a particularly good setup really compared to some. The station at the other end, Tango Foxtrot 3 Mike Lima TF3ML. If you look him up on QRZ.com, he has got an absolutely enormous antenna system, many stacked Yagis, so there's no question that his end of the setup was doing all of the work. However, having said that, if I had not switched on my IC7100 and my 4-meter dipole and actually gone on the air and called him, he could have had the best antenna system in the history of amateur radio, and he still wouldn't have worked me. So that was very nice to get him in the log on 4 meters. That's by far the furthest I've ever managed to get on that band. More recently, I also attended the first ever virtual online ham expo, organised by Eric for Zulu 1 Uniform Golf and his team. I gather that 26,000 people registered roughly. 14,000 came through the doors, as it were, on both the Saturday and the Sunday, which was the highest number of visitors that the platform they were using had ever hosted. And there were 1 or 2 technical problems. From my point of view, the big one was that I couldn't use the chat facility because it slowed my computer down to the point of virtually being unusable. But I think that's more a reflection on the quality or lack of the computer at my end, rather than it being a comment on the platform they were using. So there were 1 or 2 little niggles. And if you go to the QRZ.com forums, you can see some of the comments that some people have made, but the number of negative comments fade in comparison to the number of comments praising Eric and his team. And given that this was the first ever at all expo online of this nature, the whole thing, I think, went really, really well. Enjoyed all of the lectures that I saw. I watched some of them live, have watched some of them on catch up, and I think they're available for 30 days from the date of the expo on the website, although I suspect some of them have been or will be transcribed to YouTube as well. And they've already slated in the next expo they're going to do for March 2021. So based on the experience of last weekend, I will definitely be signing myself up for that one as well. And last but not least, the weekend after this podcast is released, there is a SOTA activation going on in the south of England, which listeners to this podcast will be well aware of, thanks to the really interesting feature in the last episode. But that's also the International Lighthouse and Lightship Weekend, which normally takes place on the 3rd weekend in August, but this year, for 1 year only, is happening on the 4th weekend in August, in order to avoid a clash with the VJ Victory in Japan, or Victory in the Pacific, as you may know it as, commemorations. So my local club won't be activating Shoreham Lighthouse for the first time in 20 years due to coronavirus concerns. So I've gone into rebel and renegade mode. I'm going to go down there, and using my own equipment, own antennas, own everything, I'm going to put the lighthouse on the air using QRP. I just thought I'd slip that in, seeing as QRP has been mentioned once or twice already in this podcast. And if anybody hears me, then please do spot me on the cluster, because I'm going to need all the help I can get. Sounds like life in general, that, doesn't it? And the call sign, if anybody's interested, is Golf Bravo 2 India Sierra Lima GB2 ISL. The SL at the end is Shoreham Lighthouse, and the I can either stand for ILLW, International Lighthouse Lightship Weekend, or it can look a bit like the number 1, in which case the call sign can look a bit like GB21, which obviously Ofcom wouldn't let me have, because this year should have been the Worthing District Amateur Radio Club's 21st activation of the lighthouse in a row. So that's what I'm up to, Martin. And as I mentioned before, because of this heat wave we're having, I'm mega sleep deprived. So if I've made even less sense than usual or rambled on more than usual, then I do apologise. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, no problems at all, Edmund. No problems at all. Right. Well, I got Mrs. B bought me a couple of birthday presents, and I got them early. I got a BHI NES 10-2 Mark IV noise cancelling speaker. My second item was a SDR Play RSPV1A. Now I've got a 1 which is permanently hooked up to my Kenwood TS590S as it's as a PAN adapter, and I've had to wire that in. So I was really pleased to get a second one. Tell you more about that in a while. The QSO today, Hamvention, or the Expo, I thought was very, very good. Absolutely 100% smack on the money, no problems at all. Thought it was very good. The only problem I would have found, and this is not me picking and being awkward, is I go to a lot of hamfests and rallies purely on the social side, to walk up and down the aisle, to chat to people and all that sort of thing. And unfortunately, you can't do that in a virtual one. Yeah, I know you got talk chat rooms and things like that, but you can't do it. I'm taking the local repeater back to the manufacturer to have a modification done to it tomorrow. So we should be back on the air with that fairly soon. GB3XP has been on the air in analog mode now for 4 months because we've been in lockdown, and it needed doing just before lockdown. Martin and I ripped it out just before lockdown and haven't been able to get it back on the roof. So it's having a little tweak before it gets back on the roof of the local hospital. And last, Edmund, that solar activation day in the southeast of England, happening on the 22nd, 23rd of August this year. And Chris Howard and myself will be out on one of the hilltops on the Saturday. And if we can convince him to come, we might have Mr. Rothwell as well. So we'll listen out for you, Edmund, see what we can do. But as I say, the guys, Richard and Tim, that are putting on the event, are really doing this for us, not themselves. So I think any support is good. And if you can work us, great. Or at least work some of the guys. Can't tell you which hilltop Chris and I are going to be on at the moment, because we haven't sat down and agreed which ones we're going to do, but we will be out. So that's what I've been up to. Not a tremendous amount, but I certainly have fun with radio. On that note, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB.
Oh, it's been a blast, Martin. Thanks for inviting me.
No problems, Leslie, and good to have you as always. And even if the gremlins did get your microphone at the start.
Yeah, there's definitely gremlins tonight.
Yeah. I'd also like to thank Mr. Dan Romanchik, KB6NU, for over the other side of the pond there, and for putting me right on some of the ARRL stuff. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you for giving me a platform to rant.
Hey, I thought I was the ranting one. You were the stabilizing influence.
Well, yeah, I guess I was on this one, but yeah, you know what I mean.
I do, but I thought it was worth discussing. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG, for joining us tonight and your interesting stuff on VHF.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Martin.
No problems at all. Well, we do hope Matthew will be back with us soon, and we do hope Ruth said she'll be back on the next episode. So hopefully we'll have a full team soon. Anyway, I'd like to say 73s to you guys, and we'll continue with the podcast. 73, guys.
Cheerio.
7-3.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news here first about two special events, call signs taking place in the UK to mark the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain. So GB80CH for home, the chain home, will be operated from Chelmsford in Essex, and the site is a complete surviving radar tower from the Battle of Britain. Also GB80BRS will be operated to commemorate the Ballsy radar station in Suffolk. And say this is where radar was developed in the late 30s. So obviously the 80th anniversary there of Battle of Britain, two special event stations for you, electronic QSLs only, and we'll pop a link on the ICQ podcast webpage where you can find more information about how to get your QSL and about the bands that are operating. Looks like it's going to be a range of bands that are going to be operating from 10 meters to 80, a single side bands, CW and FT8 as well. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of news about the rise in amateur radio over this year, as with people maybe with different time or prepping for different things with the COVID thing. So there's an opportunity now for amateurs in Canada to be recognised for their work on the hobby and be inducted in the Hall of Fame. So this is always an opportunity. Say if you know anyone who deserves to be nominated, or if you wish to self-nominate, there's a whole process that will take place here, and they say the Canadian Hall of Famers will announce their nominations soon for who will be the latest inductees into the Hall of Fame. Following on from the very successful QSO Today virtual convention, the GQRP Club have now released their agenda for their online event taking place the weekend of the 5th and 6th of September. Presentations will include things from home brewing, propagation, vector network analyzing, antennas, and FT8, FT4 talks across, say, the weekend. So that's just a breadth of things to come, but a lot of other interesting seminars will be held there as well. So the event, there is a price. This event is £4 for GQRP members. Non-members can also sign up for the event and join the QRP club just for £10 for a UK member or £17 for an international participant. But I say that also gets you a member to the club as well going forward. Links to all the information on this are on icqpodcast.com, so feel free to check it out from there. Well, now we head over to our features episode, which is the launch of the Portable Operations Challenge. Hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Well, hi guys, and for this episode's feature, it's nice to be joined by some of my colleagues. Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, Bill Barnes, WC3B, and Mr. Ed Durant, DD5LP, have been working on a new contest. Something that I know very little about, even though we chat a lot, because I'm not a contester. But they're going to try and convince me why I should take part in a contest. Frank, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. I'm not a big contester. I engage in QSO parties and here and there, and it's primarily with a group of hams that I just enjoy being with, and we have a little portable operations team, and we'll go out and we'll do that. So I'm not a big portable ops like, say, Ed is, being a renowned SOTA participant, or Bill Barnes, who is ardent contester. So I'm somewhere in the middle. But in talking with the National Contesting Journal for the ARRL, Dr. Scott Wright, about changes with the demographics of hams in general, and as well as contesters, the article that I was able to publish in the National Contesting Journal showed a little bit of the age distribution. And contesters are older than is the typical ARRL member, using that as some sort of guess about the age structure of hams. So contesters, as it's currently known, is about to fall off a demographic cliff, so to speak. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to end. But then the question is why? And there's a lot of discussion among people I talk with who are not big-time ardent contesters, who don't own beams and towers and QRO, and certainly don't own superstations. That, well, I like contesting. They call it radio sport, but it's really more about radio gear and having the right hardware to go to battle. And I got to thinking about that, about golf, and the way golf handles that as a sport is they tend to have a handicap index. So they index a given participant's playing ability in the past relative to how difficult some experts rate the golf course. So we got to thinking about that, and one thing led to another. And it occurred to me that one of the ways that we could go about creating some interest will be to create a concept of a challenge that's based on a more level playing field. And I was extraordinarily pleased to get just a number of well thought of hams who are involved with either contesting or portable operations, two of which are here, two of which happen to be our colleagues on the podcast. Bill Barnes, W3CB in Pennsylvania, is a very active contester, as we've sort of saying that, and Ed Durant, D5LP, is very active in SOTA, one of the niches of portable operations. So we've put together the Portable Operations Challenge, which just announced a couple of days ago formally. We've teased it a bit, Ed and Bill and I have, saying we've been working on it. So that's the general concept. We want to get the big guns involved as well as the little guys, little pistols, if you will. So that's it in a nutshell, Mark.
Right. So, it sounds interesting because on the odd times I've got involved in a contest, I've usually been a QRP operator because I enjoy going out and sitting in the field. And if a contest runs for 24 hours, it's pointless or in my opinion, it's always been pointless to go out and try and work the big guys until late in the contest, where they're scratching for every point and they want to hear me at that point in time. And I was once told by a guy who worked on one of the big stations, contest stations, that they said, we sometimes hear the little guy, but the problem is that you've got a big guy shouting at you all the time. So we work the big guy to get rid of him. But then another big guy comes along and the poor little guy misses out. So this sounds an interesting leveler, Frank.
Well, we hope it is. Now, Bill Barnes might want to respond to what you just said because I have experienced that as well. But Bill's really one of the active contesters. Bill, is that something you can identify with?
That seems to be generally true in my experience, but it really depends on the contest. Because certain contests, when you get to the point where you're multiplier hunting, a lot of times you will call for QRP stations or portable stations because they may be that last multiplier you need. But in general, yes, when you're working a pileup, you work the strongest ones first and try to control your pileups and manage your rates. Because that's the other thing too is one of the features I routinely use is my live rate. How many QSs am I making? In a period of time, and if my rates drop, do I need to change bands? Do I need to change modes? So that's the other compounding problem is they'll be working the strong stations and miss the weak stations, and their rate drops, and they just jump to another band that may or may not be open, depending on the time of day. So there's a lot of nuances when you're running a contest, which is, part of the reason why Frank came up with this, is to kind of level the playing field a bit.
Yeah, well, as I say, leveling the playing field will be a good thing. I mean, you talked about leveling the playing field. How's the scoring going to work, in fairness?
Ed has worked long and hard, and my hat's off to him. I don't think we would have been able to announce without Ed DD5LP. Ed, tell us about the scoring.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll jump in, and we've kept referring to leveling the playing field. Another place you will have heard that, if you've read any of the books about it, is indeed the World Radio Team Sport Championship, which we had a couple of years ago here in Germany. And I had the honour of being part of the media team on that. And they had they realised the same problem. And the way they went about it was they provided 60 locations that were tested as identically equal for location, propagation, everything else. They provided identical antennas and masts and tents, etc. And each station would bring their own 100-watt HF transceiver. So in using a physical method, they made sure everybody was exactly the same. We're not taking that approach here because we don't want to force everybody to get on a plane and go to the same place. What we're trying to do is, through the handicapping, to try and get to somewhere near to allowing for certain modes being easier to get distance, and certain modes, certain power levels affecting different things. Now, this is the first time that we've had a contest like this. And that's why it's probably called a challenge rather than a contest, but it is a contest. And the scoring, the main part of the scoring is using a method that's actually used in VHF contests, although this is a HF-only contest, and that is kilometers per watt. So the contact is made and the maidenhead locators are exchanged, and in the scoring later on, that distance is worked out, divided by the amount of power. But that's only the start of the whole handicapping. We also wanted to consider what about multiple transmitters. Obviously, your small portable guy is likely to only have one transmitter, perhaps two. The major stations, the major contest stations, may have one transmitter for every band, or two for every band. So for this first year, we've limited it to a maximum of 2 transmitters. But if somebody has 2 transmitters, the points are divided by 2 as well. Now, that might be a bit harsh. We don't know. We'll find out after we get all the results in, after this year's contest is over. But the other thing we do is the modes. For example, because we're saying the scoring is related to distance, a mode that is, shall we say, easier to get a distant contact with, such as a digital mode, such as FT8, we give that a lesser factor than CW and a lesser factor than sideband, because it's harder to get a distant contact on phone than it is on the other 2 modes. And again, these are factors we've got in the rules. Whether they'll get changed after the contest to balance it differently for next year, I think that's quite likely. But we've got something there that is at least trying to balance that kind of thing out.
Well, if you're portable, you get a little bit of an advantage.
Portable versus what we're calling QTHs, or home stations. And you get an advantage in the contact, or anybody working the portable station gets an advantage in the contact. So a home to portable contact is scored higher than a home to home, and a portable to portable is scored the highest. So all of these factors come in and give the total score. And that's where we're coming from. But on top of that, to make things even more interesting or challenging, this is a contest that's aimed to be international. What's one of the problems with the international contests? The time. So this contest is actually an 8-hour contest. But the 8 hours, the competitors decide upon themselves within a 48-hour window, so a UTC weekend. And what that means is that the single person or the team of people, because it can be a group as well, as long as you follow COVID-19 safety, they have to think about beforehand what contiguous 8 hours are they going to operate for. And depending on the bands where they think they can work the best, different times of day might be better. So there's going to be a lot of planning going in before the contest, which needs to be done by the single person or the group to give them a good chance of getting the higher scores. There's also the factor of, we don't say you have to run the same power all the time. Most countries' licenses actually say you're only supposed to use as much power as is necessary to make the contact on whichever mode you're on. And if you're using less power for the same distance, because it's kilometers per watt, the basic score, you'll get more points. So you could have a station running, let's say, 20 watts, and they call somebody else, they don't get them. Turn the power up to 50. Okay, we got them now. So that contact was done at 50 watts. Later on, band conditions might improve, and some distant stations are coming in that you're trying to work. You might get away with working them at 10 watts, which will increase your points. So there is a lot of different factors in here. This, I'm nicknaming this the Thinkers Contest, because yes, there is strategy in all contests, but this one, there's a lot more to think about. There's a lot more to plan. And we're writing some small guides to help people to understand this a bit better. And they're on the website, which Frank will mention later on. But it's really a challenge. It's not just sit down and work as many people as you can in the 8 hours. It's a lot more than that. It's decide which 8 hours, what power, what mode, one transmitter or two, one operator, or alternating operators. It's all somewhat different to what we're used to in HF contests. I think you'll agree, Bill.
Yes, I definitely agree. The interesting thing to me is because of the 8 hours restriction, I'm already starting to think ahead, and I'm probably going to want to go portable. I'm probably going to want to go QRP, and I'm going to need to hike somewhere. And so I have to plan accordingly so that I can make sure I get the maximum use of that 8 hours. So you're correct on that whole notion of thinking. I do also conceive a home station being able to strategically plan what 8 hours they want to pick up grids based on band conditions and rates. So for instance, if they want to try to maximize working portable stations because they'll be at grid squares they're not normally working, they'll have to try to anticipate when the portable stations will go out and make some connections to find out what if anyone has any plans. So you're absolutely correct. There's a little bit of strategy in here as well. And the other thing on the strategy I just wanted to mention as well is, remember, this is a multi-mode contest. The strategies you use for an FT8 contest are different than a RIDI contest, which is different than a CW contest, which is different than a phone contest. So you need to plan out in your 8 hours what bands you're going to use in addition to what modes you're going to use. So there's a lot to take in as you're figuring out how you want to work this particular contest, which is why like Ed and Frank were saying, it's something different.
One question, guys, and this is me thinking. Well, two questions actually. How are you going to police the logs? I mean, if somebody puts down they're running at 10 watts and they're really running at 50, how will you know? Because it's a worldwide contest, this has to be purely trust, I assume. But then, there are people that cheat. How are you going to handle that, Frank?
Well, there's nothing perfect, and there's two responses to that. All contests have some level of trust. Now, Ed's been very good in advising and helping to put some of our codes of conduct on our website, which all entrants agree to. And one's the contester's code of conduct. The other's the DX code of conduct. Now, yeah, well, if we could just trust people, we wouldn't have to have police out there writing speeding tickets, right? Sure. And there will be people who will not just game the system, as sort of Bill and Ed both talked about, the thinking person, but they'll try to take overt advantage. Now, one of the nice things about getting these kind of data in about where you're located is that we can put them on maps and we can look. And you won't be able to say, this is a forensic test and you had to be cheating. But you can certainly see where some people said they used 20 watts and they were outscoring everybody else in that grid square just by an order of magnitude. Well, we'll need to look at that. And eventually, just like in poker, the card cheat will get caught sooner or later. And that happens in other contests. So, Martin, there is an element of trust, but I think as we have pretty good data about what wattage you're using, where they're located, and what contacts they said that they got in their log, and in the reciprocal, the ones that they contacted, we have their logs too. You'll begin to identify some people that may not have operated, properly, and it kind of puts people on a little bit of a short list with that. And, that's not perfect.
No, I appreciate this. And that's why I'm saying I wasn't trying to, scupper your ship before you get started. It was just a question.
No, but you have people who cheat. I mean, you talk to any contest, at least I've talked with, they may grudgingly say, yeah, so-and-so, we know so-and-so is not playing by the rules or whatever. But, it's a little bit like some of these things on the bands that the FCC and others, have to get at. And you may not know who's doing it, but sooner or later you'll find them. But Bill and Ed, what are your thoughts about what we're doing as far as what Martin has asked?
Well, I think the point, the headache that every contest organizer has is, what do you do to check the logs? And our intention is to cross-check the logs, and not only to see when somebody stands out as being, hang on, they're getting a lot of contacts further away and nobody else in the area is, which could be an antenna issue, of course. They could have a lot better antenna, because we're only working on a straight out output power this year. That may become ERP next year. As I said, we're going to learn this year and build it into next year. But yeah, there always will be cheats, unfortunately. But some of that cross-checking also is so that we can prove that somebody hasn't operated for longer than 8 hours and then cherry-pick the best 8 hours out of their log before submitting that. So we will be doing cross-checking on that, and the steering committee will have to decide what the result is if we find somebody that's been cheating in that way. My personal feeling would be simple exclusion, but that's my personal feeling. The steering committee would have to decide.
Yeah, and that's why the first thing I wanted to do, just to add on to that, is to get a steering committee that comes from two operating cultures: the contesting culture and the portable ops culture. And we've had a great group of people. There's been no fistfights in the kitchen or anything like that. A very, very good group. But I think we've seen in the steering committee's email discussions how we would approach these things a little bit differently on some things and a lot differently on others. I think we worked through to get the 8-hour time period. We had perhaps the greatest discussion about that. But Bill, what do you think? Your contester, what's your thoughts about what we're doing?
Oh, I think it's okay. The other thing as well, like Ed was saying, this is the first year. We're going to learn a lot of lessons as we go through this. The other thing I wanted to bring up is This isn't like, cash prizes or anything where I don't think folks are going to cheat in general. A couple plaques, maybe a grand prize, maybe an alternative grand prize that was floating around. The one I want to see is who wins the highest kilometers per watt. That's going to be the one I want to see. So I think in general, we're going to run with this for the first year. We're going to get a lot of information from those who participate and a lot of feedback. And I think we're going to have some discussions for next year as well. Which is, because I agree with Ed, there's a difference between, hiking to a park and throwing up a dipole and hiking to a park and assembling, for instance, a, 3-band, beam and putting it up. So that, antenna alone will dramatically alter your effective radiated power and your results as well as you work in the contest. But likewise, 8 hours is 8 hours. It's a tough window as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's going to help.
But part of what Bill just said, I want to capture for a second. When you look at the difference between what we're calling a QTH station, a home station, where you've got the comforts of home, whatever they are, whether you may have a super station like K3LR up in Pennsylvania near Bill, where you've got at least a dozen stations. You've got probably every technological convenience as well as accoutrements of having a dedicated building for that. You think, well, hey, I can't compete there. Well, it's going to be a real challenge to see if the big guns can actually win this. Now, I used to teach courses on the sociology of sport and did research and published on what happened to high school athletes later in life. They make more money, and it's not just because they became a pro athlete. Most don't. So I delved into that, and every definition of sport involves a strategy. A lot of people think boxing, the pugilistic arts, that's just brawn. Talk to any boxer. No, absolutely not. It's a strategy. Golf, there's a strategy. Otherwise, whoever's got the most expensive and best golf clubs will win every match. Doesn't happen. And so one of the things that we've tried to do collectively is make it less about how much money you've put into radio gear and more about what contesters call this, a radio sport. So sport involves strategy. I think the discussions, Martin, that the three of us have engaged in has really pushed that to a point where Bill and Ed, coming from the contesting world in Bill's case, coming from the soda world in Ed's case, how do you put these together so that it's really competitive? And the subtle thing Ed pointed out, it's not about having a QRO and a high gain beam, because you're going to get far less credit for that little contact you made 100 miles away than the little pistol with the QRP rig is going to make that same with 5 watts. The only contest I could find that had open logs and had any distance that you didn't have to go in and compute by Maidenheads, which I plan to do on some other logs, was the Stu Perry contest. It's a 160 meter contest. And I took them and I looked at the 1,000 watt group, the 100 watt barefoot group, and the 5 watt QRP group. And if you looked at their longest DX contact by kilometer, and you looked at their average contact over all their contacts, guess who won? Well, of course, the QRO won, followed by the barefoot, followed by the QRP. Same old, exactly what you saw. But when you made the metric, kilometers per watt, guess what happened? The QRP group as a whole dominated. So I hope we get some big guns enter, because I'm just not sure if they're going to wipe the floor up with everybody else. And I will go with the data. We'll stand to be wrong. I was communicating with Rick Roderick, who's president of ARRL. He lives in the state west of me in Arkansas, in Little Rock. I wanted to get his thoughts on it. He thought it was interesting, very different. He thought the ARRL's contesting group might, want to look at this and this kind of thing. So I haven't done it, but I almost want to do an open challenge to Rick Roderick, the ARRL president. If you enter and you win this contest, I'll come over to Little Rock and I'll buy you a steak dinner at your restaurant of choice. Because I'm just not sure the big guns are going to win.
You heard it first on ICQ podcast.
You certainly did. Now, because we're going a bit long, guys, I'm going to change tack here very slightly. I think that you're talking about will the big boys come on bits and pieces. I think you'll find that people that are into contesting will look at this and go, this is something different. I'll have a go at this. So that I think is going to be important. Secondly, it's happening over the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of October, if my memory serves me right.
Right.
Yeah. So, when are you starting to accept registration? Are you having registration, or is it just send you log in after the event? Because if people are going to take part in this, and it is a thinking contest, then they've got to start doing some planning fairly soon, I would suggest.
Well, we aren't doing registrations, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Some, we're just some poor hams trying to put on a contest in terms of the overhead. But secondly, for the portable operator, they're the barefoot 100-watt people, okay, wow, I don't have to do that. Soccer, I don't have soccer with my kids this weekend. Hey, I can play radio. But if they hadn't registered, then they go, I can't do it. So we want the last minute entrance because we think that builds interest. And on top of that, you can have as many operators as you want. You can just only have a maximum of 2 concurrently used transmitters. So, Martin, that's a great question. We haven't done registration, but I want to turn it over to Bill and to Ed. I mean, in the future years, do you think registration is something we want to do?
I'll jump in if Bill's not there. No, I think it's right to keep it open. And the other thing I'll point out, the floating 8 hours where you choose when you want to operate, depending on when you have the time, when it's light, when the propagation's good, and all the other reasons. If you find you go out and it says a portable operator, and for some reason something delays you, because we don't want the people to register, they start half an hour later or an hour later. It doesn't matter. As long as they don't operate for more than 8 hours, that's a valid entry to the contest, as long as they don't go past the end of the 48 hours, which is unlikely. So my personal opinion, no to registration. Keep it open, keep it straightforward, and just we run with whatever data we get back in the form of the logs coming in afterwards. And I really do, for some of the big contest stations, or some of the normal contest stations, as well as all the portable and SOTA and parks operators, please give this a try. The more people that take part, the more fun it will be, and the more data we'll have to make it better for next time.
Well, I agree with you totally, guys, and I'm really pleased that we've done this tonight. Not a contest operator myself, but do you know what? You might have just set a spark in place. Now, I know that this is going to appear on the ICQ website. Frank has also got it up on his website at the moment. Frank, do you want to give the URL for it?
You bet. I have 2 websites. I have my personal one, which I talk about a bit, k4fmh.com, but I've got a companion website that I have things like this. I have also the Homebrew Heroes program, for example, and some other things. And that is Fox Mike Hotel, FOXMIKEHOTEL, foxmikehotel.com/challenge. And if you just go to Fox Mike Hotel, you'll see POC prominently at the top, and you'll see a logo there on the front, at least for right now. And Bob's your uncle. There you are.
Well, that's effectively given our colleagues where to find you. I wish you guys every success. You know that Colin and I will promote you any which way we can, because we try and work with each other, and as ICQ presenters, we're all like a big family anyway, although this is not something I've been necessarily involved with, but it doesn't mean to say I'm not interested. I wish you every success, guys, because I think there's things like this that need to happen in the hobby. We need to shake up some of the old thinking, get some new ideas out there. But most of all, let's make it fun. Because if we're making it fun and everybody feels that they've got a fair chance of doing well, then I think you've cracked it, guys. So that's where I am on that one, Frank.
Thank you so much. And let me just say, Ed has been working with a software publisher in Australia who is developing a custom version of the logging software that handles most of the issues. Bill is taking a whack at a template for N1MM and is working to try to get some bugs out of that one. So we hope that we'll have two logging programs that contestants can use if they choose. But these guys are doing just yeoman's work, and my hat's off to them. And I'm very, very grateful for the team that has come on board on the steering committee.
Let me jump in and say thanks to Mike VK3AZZ for VK Contest Logger. Anybody that's been in contesting for a while will have come across it, especially if you're in Australia or New Zealand. Very simple to use contest logging program in case somebody's not used to contesting and the complexity of the program puts you off. This doesn't. It's a really nice, simple, lightweight program. And once you tell it you're doing the POC, that's it. It'll only ask for what data it needs for the POC. It'll give you the rules if you want them. It'll do everything. So it's a really nice tool, and Mike has done some sterling work on that. That's not yet released. However, it's ready. So I've just been talking to him again today, and the last thing we're doing is a little bit of the documentation, but that's ready to go. And here's a challenge for all the ICQ presenters. Why don't we try and get all the ICQ presenters on in this contest and this challenge, and we'll see between all the ICQ presenters which person gets the most points.
I know who's going to get the least points, but we won't embarrass him.
We'll have a championship among the steering committee as well. My portable ops team, just three other hams and me, we're going to foot the bill for a plaque for whoever wins the steering committee. So I think the ICQ one is a good one.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to close it up here because we've gone long for a feature. But I think it was very important to get you guys on to hear this. Please support Frank, Bill, and Ed with this Portable Ops Challenge. And don't just remember, it needs to be fun. And this sounds like fun. So, guys, please turn up on the 3rd and 4th of October for 8 hours sometime within that window. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot,
Thank you,
Martin.
Mark.
Just a quick change to what you actually heard. Ed informed me afterwards that unfortunately he got the VK call sign wrong. Call sign should have been a VK3AVV. That's Victor Kilo 3 Alpha Victor Victor. I hope this has helped.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, congratulations to Ed, Frank and Bill for pulling together as part of the team for the Portal Operations Challenge. Congratulations to our friends and colleagues there for this event, and hopefully our features episode will whet your appetite for something to take part in. And as I say, certainly let us know if you've got any questions or queries, and we'll get them to the guys to get those answered for you. So certainly many congratulations for them, and I'm sure the hobby will appreciate an event to take part in, say, this very weird 2020. Well, Dad, as I say, just touching base and going for our list of things we do before we wrap up the show. Just wondering if there's anything else going on in your world that we need to mention before we wrap up the show.
Oh, my world. Well, technically I'm on holiday, although it doesn't feel like it. Radio's been a bit quiet for me because I've just demolished my back garden shed. Nearly killed me when I took the roof off. This is a 10-foot by 6-foot shed. I could just about lift the roof, and I got it to the balance point. And as I was getting it to the ground, the corner caught my shirt, ripped to about a 6-inch rip in the shirt. But talk about being a lucky boy. It didn't get the skin. I would have had a real nasty gash there. But no, I'm busy doing all sorts of other things at the moment. We'll try and get on the air next week. Certainly intending to do the SOTA event next weekend with Chris Howard. And if I can get him out, Mr. Rothwell as well. So, yeah, that's what I'm kind of up to, Colin.
Fantastic. No problems. Well, so importantly, now we need to thank our donors episode that helped keep the show advert-free, Charles Riley, Golf for Juliet, Quebec, X-Ray. Thank you very much, Charles, for your donation. And again, you can show your appreciation for the show and the value you got from what we do by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate. Where, as I say, whenever you find value in the show, pop it over to us using the PayPal links, and say that helps keep us advert-free and paying our way. We'd like to thank Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie, India Bravo, Dan, Kilo Bravo 6, November Uniform, and Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, for taking part in the News Roundtable with you, Dad. As always, you can keep in touch with us and what we're doing up in the last over the few days to our next show. So you can do that by either subscribing to a newsletter on the ICQ podcast page, all the news and information sent to you between shows. You can also keep in touch by our YouTube channel, so it's youtube.com/ICQ podcast, where some of our historical stuff from Hamfest will be there for you to take on board there. And again, there's the usual Facebook groups and our Twitter handles at Colin Butler and at M1MRB for taking those bits and pieces from there for you as well. Right, well, I think that just about wraps up show number 331. So I say that's fantastic there, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, guys, even with staycations and holidays going on, we'll be back in a fortnight's time, say with episode 332 for you. So we look forward to catching up with them. 73, so.
Yeah, 73.